My guest today is someone who has quietly built a legacy by developing people, elevating an industry, and refining how we think about franchising and leadership. Brandon Sheppard is a key force behind Wiedemann's explosive growth in the U.S., serving as a sub-franchisor for the southern region and co-owner of multiple successful operations. With a background in law and a mind for business, Brandon's work sits at the intersection of strategy, talent, development, and national advocacy. With a law degree from West Virginia University and a deep belief in building from the ground up, he's helped transform small-town franchises into million-dollar operations. But beyond revenue, what defines his story is a deep commitment to unlocking potential in people, in communities, and in possibility. He served on the board of directors for the National Association of Landscape Professionals, including a term as president. He's been recognized nationally for his advocacy, opened his doors to key policy leaders, and worked to protect and uplift the green industry professionals across the country. Today, we're diving into the mindset of an entrepreneur, operator, and leader who's building far more than a business. He's building a legacy. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I like to start every episode with the same question. I think there's something so important about learning about someone's childhood because it's those formative years that shape our character and kind of defined, who we become. So I want to dive into your incredible journey. The reason we're here today is to ask you this. Walk us through your childhood upbringing. What did that look like and what forces shaped who you become?
Wow. I couldn't imagine a better childhood. By no means did I grow up in an affluent background. Like we weren't zipping off to the Hamptons for weekends. Grew up in a small town in Ontario, fairly normal middle class living. But I had a family that afforded their children every opportunity to learn, to grow, to be challenged, whether it was academics, athletics. There was never, if there was an opportunity to learn and grow, my parents and my grandparents made sure it happened. Like there was never, we wanted for nothing. And learning and development of their children and grandchildren was their mission as parents and grandparents. So I couldn't have been more fortunate. And I think that contributed not just to my adulthood, but also those of my siblings.
How many siblings do you have?
I'm the oldest of four.
How was that like? Because I'm the oldest as well. And there's like something that comes with being like the older child. You have some pressures about, being the leader. And how was that like for you?
So my siblings are almost like two groups. So there's myself, my immediately younger brother is 3.5 years younger than me. We kind of had the classic older brother, younger brother dynamic. And then my second brother is about 9.5 years younger than I am. So he was decidedly the youngest. And then I have a sister who's 16 years younger than me. So she's almost like another generation. Couldn't be blessed with better with better siblings. I mean, my wife famously recounts it on our first date. I describe my siblings as my best friends. It's rare that I go more than like 36, 48 hours and not talk to all of them. So it's just another gift my parents gave us, raising children with kind of the expectation and understanding that if you invest in the relationship with your siblings, you can have, friends for life who you have a bond with that just, is unlike any other bond. So yeah, pretty awesome. I am decidedly the eldest child. And every one of my siblings would be like, yeah.
I am the oldest, and my sister is 4 years older. So very similar dynamics there. And then our youngest brother, he is 15 years younger than me and then 10 years younger than my sister. So like similar dynamics there. Right. It's almost like friends and then like that older sibling dynamic, which is great.
Like Ty Blair, who's my immediately younger brother, he and I were the classic older brother, younger brother till probably like my senior year of high school or so. And then it was just like switch flipped. And when I started law school and he started his engineering education, we were roommates. So, I mean, it's the very much went from being siblings to best friends. And like people when I was in law school, like, you live with your brother? I'm like, why wouldn't I? Like, this is the
It's
closest person
awesome.
I've got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I'm sure you have stories for days.
We don't have time. Yeah.
Well, you're gonna have to share a story one day. So it's interesting that, you were able to build that great relationship with your family. And not a lot of people have the privilege to be able to work with their family and build something like what you guys were able to build. So what was it like saying, okay, I'm going to go and work with my dad and my brother and build what you guys did together?
So it started off with my dad and I, and my young, because it's my youngest brother who works with us. So he joined, and he came out of university. But working with family is both simultaneously a challenge and a gift. I never question the motives of my brother or my dad. We may not agree, and God knows we have fought, but I don't question their motives. It's not like you're not wondering, are they trying to get something over on me? Are we out positioning? Like, is there an ulterior motive? No. We're in the game. We're in business for exactly the same outcome. We're trying to win for the business. We're trying to win for each other, trying to win for a family. Now, that said, it takes a lot of work because, I'll be honest, when we started the business, my parents had moved from Canada. I moved over from after finishing law school, and it was pretty much a classic business startup. I lived with my parents for a few years, which out of grad school, not exactly the easiest transition to make, but it's what we needed to do to get the business off the ground. And that introduces some complexities into even the work dynamic because you go from being in the office together to sitting at the dinner table together. And
Mm.
we had to set really clear ground rules. And in terms of leaving work at work and home at home and never the two shall meet, because that's not healthy and that's not normal. It also meant we had to set rules on how we disagree. Because, when you're fighting with family or disagreeing with family, it's different than a professional interaction. Sometimes it's far simpler because you understand where the person's coming from and you can get to resolution much quicker. Other times it takes on like the father-son dynamic, the older brother, younger brother dynamic can play a role. It's an ongoing commitment to respect the other party. And when someone says, this is the point where if this continues, I might say something I can't take back, you got to let them go. Like, you got to be like, okay, I'm not going to keep trying to prove my point. I've got to let them walk away, and we'll come back at this when we've had a chance to kind of, air it out and be ready to engage more functionally. But man, it takes work, but it is so gratifying on the other end because the successes you have professionally are lifting your family up too. It's not just, the opportunities you're creating are lifting up family too. And so for every challenge, there's 10 rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess one of the questions that I have for you is like, how did the vision come where everyone aligned to say this is something worth working for? How did everyone say, I'm all in and this is something that we want to do together?
So when it came to starting the business, we kind of synced up with when Weedman was expanding into the US. And my dad's background had been in horticulture and agriculture. I mean, grew up on a dairy farm in Ontario, went to McGill for a degree in ag. So he'd been in agricultural sales, had ended up being a large supplier to Weedman in Canada. And when Weedman was looking to move into the US, my mom's from Southern West Virginia, and my parents had always had a plan at some point to move south because it was kind of like they'd spent the first 30 plus years of their marriage in Canada. And at some point they'd planned to move south. And this was just an opportunity to be part of this new business venture going into the US, as well as them moving south. And it coincided with me coming out of law school. And candidly, I never wanted to work for someone else. I'm a little hardwired to be an entrepreneur. So it was just a great opportunity for Dad and I to join forces on that.
Which kind of leads me into my next question for you. My sister is currently in law school, and I have seen how incredible incredibly difficult it is. Just, uh, the amount of work you're doing, and yeah, it's a lot of work. So, and she's in the process now where they're applying to summer internships, and everyone's talking about corporate law or nonprofit work. How is it like for you to make a change and say, you know what, I'm not going to so like the traditional route of law school, but I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to go into business with my dad? Was that like something difficult for you to kind of go the non-traditional path?
I was non-traditional from the word go. I started law school with no intention of ever practicing. I explored getting an MBA or getting a law degree, and candidly, I knew if I was gonna work that hard towards either outcome, I really wanted to enjoy the educational experience, and I found the study of law fascinating. I mean, there are very few people who go, I thought law school was really fun. It was hard. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but the intellectual exercise of the problem solving and the reasoning and the exploration of precedent and was just really interesting. It also, knowing that I didn't want to practice law, took a lot of pressure off of the legal experience, because I wasn't worried about what firm I landed at. I wanted to really dive into the education and explore it as much as I could. Like oftentimes we'd have group projects and I'd choose to do them alone because I wanted to have the fullest experience of the research and the writing, and I had a great time.
That's awesome. So, I'm sure there's so many advantages of being a lawyer now that you're an entrepreneur and you kind of have that edge. How has that played into your day to day and how you're able to excel in all the things that you're doing in business?
Law is the legal education teaches you a methodical structure to approach problems. It is very much a problem solving rubric. So it's almost like you're schooled in a way of thinking. And beyond the hard skills, like understanding contracts and understanding litigation, arbitration, mediation, all of those things, being able to interpret statutes, those are the obvious bits of where a legal education helps you in business. But it's really, and if you ask other lawyers who are in this space, I know several other leaders in the lawn and landscape space, including some of my colleagues on the board of directors for NALP. JT Price comes to mind, also have law degrees. And they would tell you the same thing. It's the reasoning and the thought process that really helps. It forces you to examine the downside of every situation. People have jokingly called me a certified pessimist, because even when you're excited about a project, you're looking for how it fails. Like, what happens if this goes sideways? Where might it break? Am I comfortable with those consequences if that happens? And it's interesting sometimes being in a room full of entrepreneurs where they can get really excited about an idea and the lawyers are in the corner going, well, but what if this? And what if that? And we're trained to basically be hardwired into if you can't handle the potential downside, you really should write off the upside. Because unless you can manage that downside risk, the upside potential is probably not worth it. So it's that thought process and reasoning that's really been, the biggest benefit of a legal education in business.
Can you tell me about a time where, you did go through something really hard? I kind of want to get into your mindset. Aspiring entrepreneurs or, entrepreneurs who have been in business for less than 5 years, what advice can you give them and kind of walk us through how you go about getting out of those ruts and when things do go south, even though you've planned and prepared for things to move in the right way? Kind of walk us through your mindset and how you're able to move forward.
Having lived that journey, having coached innumerable people through the journey of journey into entrepreneurship, and those first 5 years are the hardest. Statistically, it's verified. Year 3 is typically where things can often start spinning out of control. It's typically where your initial financing, when you went to the bank with your business plan, if things aren't performing, that's where you're running out of money. And if you're not able to plot a path out of your situation, the funds often dry up. So that 3 to 5 year window is often the hardest. So having lived it, having coached people through it, I think the most important lesson I would tell anyone who's an aspiring entrepreneur is surround yourself with good people, mentors, advisors. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be embarrassed because you failed. Nobody is successful in business without failure, and lots of it. And I would also really stress the role of planning. I think we often in business or in leadership overuse military metaphors because they're cliche, but there's two here that really make sense. And one is attributed to Eisenhower, the whole plans are, and I'm paraphrasing. So Dwight D. Eisenhower famously is credited with saying, plans are useless, but planning is everything. And the other is attributed to Baron von Moltke the Elder, that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And the lesson to take from that is that whatever you set out to plan, no matter how well you lay it out, something's going to go wrong. It's not going to work out as planned. But the work you put into building that robust plan, the conversations you had with your accounting team, with your banker, with your mentors, with your business advisors, that's where the real value is. It's that process that prepares you to adjust and to be nimble when things go wrong, when things don't go to plan, or the weather isn't what you thought it was going to be, because God knows in the green industry, Mother Nature gets a vote. The exercise of putting the work in to build your plan is really where the value is. It's not the plan itself. And don't be so married to the plan that when things go wrong, you can't see the next opportunity. Because I oftentimes will see, new business owners, when things aren't going exactly the way that they had planned it to go, struggle to adjust because they haven't taken stock of what has changed. They're so wedded to the plan that it's hard for them to adjust because it's almost like they've identified with the plan as who they are and what their business goal was. And the fact that it's not working is somehow or another a failure on them. When the bigger failure is the inability to adjust to changing realities. And that planning process is what gets you ready to make those adjustments. It's a very long-winded answer.
No, I think that really hits home with the things that you're experiencing as someone who is new to this, right? Because you don't have that experience to say, I made it through. And, it's just a matter of figuring it out and keep pushing forward. But how long do you stay in, that mindset of like, oh, this stinks? How do you get yourself out of that to do all the things that you said? Like, what are some of the, coping mechanisms that you use or you have used throughout your time as an entrepreneur?
Everyone's going to end up there. Everyone's going to have doubt in their plan, doubt in their product, doubt in themselves. It's only a matter of when and how often. Because there's never a point in the business arc where you're free from trouble, right? It's not like once you get past year 5, it's sunshine and roses off to the Fortune 500, right? Like there will be other times where there's adversity or challenges. Some of them you have no control over. There are a whole lot of individuals. If you think in our recent history, COVID threw a whole lot of people, a whole lot of wrinkles that they weren't planning on. There are a lot of businesses right now that are scrambling to make adjustments to the tariff regime that's being rolled out. Nobody planned for that. So there's no shame in admitting, honestly, there's more shame in not admitting that you're struggling. Every one of us, as part of the human condition, are going to have points where we need someone to help us, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a professional. And having the humility to say, I'm in a dark spot right now, or I don't know how to solve the problem that's in front of me, whether it's personal, whether it's business, because God knows in entrepreneurship, those cross-pollinate quite frequently. Because if you're starting a business, the partner you have chosen in life is right on that ride with you. Like, whether they're working in the business or not, they're living the stress with you. So it's important to understand that, one, it's okay to be struggling, and asking for help is is often one of the hardest things to do, but it's so very important. And understand that you should not feel ashamed or less of a person because you needed help along the way. I promise you, every person who's made it to the highest arc in business and politics or wherever has had help along the way.
Wow. Well, I'm going to ask you for help now. One of the things that, I am kind of not struggling, but debating on, when is it the right time to hire and grow your team? When do you know that you're ready to say, okay, I think I should go for it, even though it's scary to say, like, hey, am I going to have the capital in 6 months from now? I have it now and I think I'm, steady, but should I make the move? What do you think?
So you're in the scariest spot, right? That first employee, because what I think a lot of people who haven't ever been a business owner or an executive leader in a business, they don't necessarily appreciate the stress that comes from suddenly being responsible for other people. Because when somebody says, I'm going to come work for you, they're also saying, I have confidence that you're going to get me paid so that I can put food on the table for my children. I can keep a roof over the house for my family. And that burden is real. And so in your situation, at some point, there's just a leap. You've got to have a plan. You've got to stress test your plan. You've got to look at it and go, all right, the numbers are here, but you've got to believe in yourself to make that step. The first one's hard because it's you stepping into that responsibility. But as you grow, growth has to be a mindset. Like as you get beyond it, I'm going to migrate onto the second half of my answer because I think it might help with the first, is that the reason you're hiring somebody now is because the team that got you to where you are not the team that's going to get you to where you're going. And that's never going to change in the arc of your business. No matter how successful the last quarter or the last year was, what got you where you are is not who is going to get you to where you're going, because your business is bigger. It's more complex. You're serving different customers. Growth has to be a perpetual mindset as you look at your team. And so as you're evaluating the whole, when do I make that move? This is the hardest one, but you have to believe in yourself and go like, I've got this. I believe in you, but I'm not the one who's responsible for making payroll.
Yeah.
But the adage is, what got you to where you are? The team who brought you the success so far has been you, but you can't alone get to that next level. And as you add employee 2, 3, 4, and when you're on to employee 50, it feels a little different, but that growth mindset has to remain the same. You constantly need to be adding more people and improving the quality of the people to facilitate the evolution of how you serve not just your customer, but the opportunities you're providing for your people. Because people are going to come into your team at different levels, right? Not everyone is going to continue to climb the ladder inside the business. But as you strengthen and build your operation, you make everyone's income more secure. You make their opportunities bigger and more robust. And so even that growth just continues to add to their future as well. Entrepreneurship on some level is, there was a line from The West Wing, that, political drama, the Aaron Sorkin program from years and years ago, where at some point you just have to make the commitment, throw your hat over the fence and go get it. The numbers will only get you so far. The big piece that keeps you from making that first hire is belief in yourself.
So how did you know over the years that someone was the right fit? Like, what got you to say, I want to take a chance on this person? Because I've seen and read a lot of things that, you've talked about how important it is for you to grow the people within your organization. So, what are the things that you looked at when hiring?
I am always looking for a willingness to learn, an insatiable curiosity, and someone who's uncomfortable being uncomfortable, in the sense that especially in our space, right? In the lawn care and landscape space, there aren't always a raft of candidates who are tailor-made for the opportunities we have. So we're often challenged with finding tailor-made individuals. It's almost like table stakes in our space that you're going to have to take a leap of faith on somebody's ability to step into a role that they have no experience in. Because, it's not like we're hiring accountants or CPAs. We don't have universities or colleges churning out ready-made lawn care technicians or, landscape crew foremen. We do have landscape architects, but you're often having to hire people who don't have the obvious skills and attributes. And I would argue that that's an advantage, because I think too often in the corporate world, we treat a resume as some manner of a CYA tool, where you rely on somebody having checked all the right boxes to be the way that if that goes sideways and they're the wrong hire, you go, yeah, but they went to all the right schools. They had all the right experience. Well, the most important part of the interview is getting to know the person on the other side of the table. How do they think? How do they respond to challenges and adversity? Are they willing to learn, to pick up new skills? How do they play with others? Because being in the workplace often means you're working in a team with other people. Or is this somebody who's going to take, feedback well? What if they're, reporting to someone who's considerably younger than them? So I think we overly rely on resumes instead of taking the time to get to know the person, because there are an awful lot of times that the best person for the job in terms of their aptitude and their ability is not the person who's gone through the usual process to get there. Maybe life hasn't given them the opportunities. They haven't had the opportunity to go to the right school or get the right experience, but they sure as heck have the desire and the willingness to work and put the effort in and the aptitude. I guess my message would be willing to take a chance on the people who aren't the usual suspects.
Is there an interview question that you like to ask that gets you a good idea as to who that candidate is?
I almost eschew the traditional interview questions. I mean, I'm a big believer. If you're interviewing someone and you're talking any more than 10% of the time, you're the one being interviewed. And so giving the individual on the other side of the table the opportunity to tell their story and help you understand more about them, their process for breaking down challenges, for how they handle feedback, getting to know them more as an individual and a person is really more important than the canned interview questions they came ready to give me. We've all seen the list of, here are the goofy questions that Google or Yahoo asks okay, great. It's getting to know the person and their willingness to learn and how they handle challenges is way more important to me.
It's interesting that you say that. You're one of the very few people who have said, I listen more than I talk, because I think many times hiring managers go in there pumped up about a candidate they think is a good fit and they want to sell them on the position, and they talk the entire time and they really don't understand who that candidate is. And there's so many cues when you're interviewing someone. You almost learn more about the way they speak, the way they sit, than, sometimes like what they're saying. And it's just kind of getting that overall understanding of who the candidate is. So I completely agree with you on that.
We actually will take that almost a step further, especially when we're hiring individuals who are going to be in a sales role, is we have a component of the interview where there's a role play, which that is a test on how someone is going to, someone's willingness to learn and try things that are different, where we basically will leave them in a room with a script, like basically, here's what you're going to do. And more often than not, it's an opportunity that they're supposed to pick up a phone, call an extension, and sell the person on the other end of the phone a trip to Florida. And there are people who will get up and walk out because they won't be willing to do something unorthodox. But something else it does is it means the person on the other end of the phone who grades them on the performance on this Florida call never sees the person.
Wow.
Because if you're on a phone or an online sales application, the customer never sees you either. And it's amazing how that factors into the like the subconscious bias that we all have. Like, there are people who have knocked the ball out of the park on that Florida call that look nothing like the salesperson that you stereotypically are expecting.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a recruiter that I'm training right now, and I tell everyone on my team when they first start recruiting is no one knows how long you've been recruiting. They don't know that this is your first call. They don't know that, you haven't been doing this for years, that you don't know the industry. There's times where your computer shuts down and your script is gone, but they don't know that. And there's something so powerful about that. And it's mind blowing that you do that, because on so many levels, you're able to, one, see if the candidate truly wants to be there and wants that position. So you're getting that of like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to go for it if I do well or not. There's always room for improvement. And then the second part is the unbiased, because we look at people and we have like an idea, but when someone else is grading them, I think that's really awesome. And I think a lot of people are going to be able to use that in their company. So thank you for that.
It's interesting you mentioned the dynamic of the insecurity or even imposter syndrome that people who are new or often young in a position have, where it's really easy for them to doubt themselves. Are other people going to believe that I'm fit for this role? Or are they going to believe that I know what I'm doing? And it's the doom cycle in their own brain. The person sitting on the other end of the table, exactly to your point, has no idea how long they've been a recruiter. They have no idea how long they've been doing, whatever the task is. But it's really easy to doubt yourself in that space. I know when I was starting out, as a leader in business, there were more than a few times I had that nagging doubt in my own brain about whether I belonged at that boardroom table or, in that role, and recognized it later that it was my own insecurities and not judgment from anyone else in the room. It was me doubting myself.
Well, that's a good transition into the questions that I have for you as far as leadership and your vision. You've stepped outside of, being a leader within your own company and into the National Association of Landscape Professionals and, served as the president. What made you take that leap of faith and that added responsibility on top of everything else that you were doing?
It was kind of a slow walk. It wasn't I'm going to jump directly into a leadership role in the organization. It was initially, and many people in NALP's organization have heard this story. Initially, I was rather frustrated with our industry's top organizations' representation in the face of adverse regulation, primarily on the fertilizers and pesticide side. I didn't think that we as an association were doing nearly enough to protect the interests of the industry. So I joined the Government Affairs Council, basically in if I'm going to complain about it, I better be willing to do something about it. So I joined the council, and after a year or two, I ended up being, I think I was chair of the council for 5 years, I believe. I'm only supposed to be 2, but they couldn't find anybody else who was dumb enough to keep signing up. And then I transitioned from there onto the board of directors.
How long have you been in the board of directors now?
I was on the board for 2 years before joining the executive committee. So this will be this is my last year on the executive committee, and then I'll roll back onto the board itself. So I've been on the board in some capacity. This will be my 6th year.
Wow. What is your vision for the industry, and where would you like for the industry to be in the next 5-10 years?
My sincere goal is for our industry, lawn care and landscaping, to be viewed and understood by regulators and the general public more as a solution or a tool for building healthier, safer communities, for providing real, tangible solutions for our changing weather patterns. and to be viewed as a tremendous positive for both environmental and public health. We've been doing this work to make our communities healthier and safer, managing stormwater for decades. But the public and the regulating, and elected officials don't necessarily understand how the trees that we care for, the lawns and the landscapes that we enhance, how they're actively working to sequester carbon and manage stormwater pollution every day. And that through professional management and the enhancement and the health and the vigor of those plants, how we're helping communities right now to solve many of the climate challenges that we're facing all across the nation. So my goal is for us to be better appreciated as a solution for those challenges than we are today. Candidly, we're moving towards a carbon economy, whether we like it or not. We may be on a bit of a pause right now with the current administration, but globally, a lot of governments are saying, look, the companies that are generating this air pollution should bear a certain cost for it. It makes sense that the entities that are absorbing that carbon or helping to manage it, whether it's agriculture, whether it's horticulture, whether it's silviculture, should be benefactors because they're the ones helping to solve the problem. And I want to see our industry positioned to be a solution for that, as opposed to being viewed, unfortunately, as more of a negative. Because too often the focus has been on the tools, the people, the products we use to care for landscapes, and not enough discussion has been had about the benefits, the air quality, the water quality, the human health. It is well documented that spending time in nature or around green plants helps to reduce stress, helps to reduce cardiovascular disease. Data is there, and we just need to be seizing that message more effectively.
Absolutely. I have a question that I wanted to get your thoughts on and see what advice you would have for a 20-year-old who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur. So what would you say to someone starting off?
It is one of the most rewarding, paths you can ever walk. No one will ever pay you what you're fully worth. The best way to capitalize on it is to hang your own, shingle out there and do it. Now, I'll also tell you that to any young entrepreneur, working for someone else to learn the business that you want to go into is not a setback. It is not undermining your credibility as an entrepreneur. It's probably accelerating your growth rate and making success more likely. But I would also say surround yourself with smart people, mentors, coaches, colleagues. Entrepreneurship doesn't mean you have to be Christopher Columbus and solve everything yourself. You don't have to be the one to discover it. Learning from other people, having the humility to understand that the fastest way to get somewhere is to learn from others is critical in business. Having been in the franchise side forever, I would often say that there's two truths in business. You either pay to make your own mistakes or you pay to learn from someone else's. And you may pay to learn from someone else's by going to school. You may pay by hiring a mentor. You may pay by joining a franchise system. But one way or the other, that learning isn't free. You're paying for it with money or time. But I would also come back to the two quotes from earlier. That planning is everything, and that your plans are going to get sidelined. That whole plans are worthless, planning is everything, and no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Your business journey isn't a straight line. No entrepreneur has ever gone from idea to implementation without stair steps, hiccups, failures, and understand that is just part of the process and it doesn't make you less. Success, and I hate to go to the cliche again, but success is getting up one more time than you got knocked down. So, it's understand there will be setbacks, but it is worth it in the end.
Wow, that's some good stuff, Brandon. So I want to go into a fun little section here, which is some rapid fire questions for you. Just kind of wanting to get to know you a little more. So what's your go-to genre of music or your favorite artist on repeat right now?
A little bit of everything. If you open my Spotify, you'd see everything from CCR, Eagles, Guns N' Roses, Sturgill Simpson, Lana Del Rey, I mean, a little bit of Tupac, a little bit of everything.
That's awesome stuff. Favorite U.S. state you visited and why?
So I've been to all 50. So I do believe I can speak to this with some credibility. Alaska was number 50 for me. I know it was 49th, but it was the 50th state for me. It was remarkable. It's big. I grew up in Canada, been around mountains my whole life. Alaska's big. It's amazing. I'd say Hawaii is pretty amazing too. So that it may say that the United States finished strong by adding 49 and 50 and then being just real bangers to states. But part of my heart will always be connected to West Virginia. So
Awesome.
classic known answer from a lawyer.
What is the best advice a mentor has given you?
So I had a Sunday school teacher when I was like middle school into high school, Doris Lay. She was a metallurgical engineer building bearings for aircraft in World War II. So an unusual job for a woman in that period of time. But she always drove all of her students to be comfortable challenging everything, whether it's science, whether it's faith, whether it's reason. To challenge or explore isn't threatening your faith or science, it's part of the process, right? Like if we didn't ever challenge science, no one would ever have sailed far enough away from the coast that they couldn't see the shore. We'd still believe the world was flat. And so exploring and being willing to, go beyond the boundaries, basically approach things as if, forget the out of the box thinking, there is no box.
Good. What is your ultimate comfort food after a long day?
Does wine count?
Yes, it does.
So yeah, to my friends I'm very much a foodie. I'm the person who will have like pounds of foie gras in the freezer at any point because you just never know when you might need it. But if you want the guilty pleasure comfort food, I like fish sticks. So ghetto, but I love it.
That's awesome. What hobby or activity instantly puts you in a good mood?
Anything outdoors, sailing, skiing, mountain biking. Yeah, if I'm breathing fresh air, I'm a happy person.
What's one travel destination still on your bucket list?
Once upon a time, I wanted to do the Trans-Siberian Railway from one side of Russia to the other, but that's kind of out right now. So in terms of places I haven't been that need to go, I think it's Australia and New Zealand.
Among your colleagues and other successful entrepreneurs, what do you think you all have in common?
I would say an insatiable curiosity.
If you could give one younger self or your younger self one sentence of advice, what would it be?
Somebody yells, "Look out," duck. Don't turn around. Duck. I'm the poster child for why kids shouldn't throw rocks at each other. I had a really severe eye injury when I was a kid because I turned around when someone yelled, "Look out." So,
Oh man. So I guess I have one last question for you, Brandon, and that is, when all of this is said and done and you're at the end of your career, what would you like your legacy to be?
I looked at your questions the other night and was like, what do I want my legacy? And the answer I said out loud to my wife is the same one I'll give to you right now. I've never really thought about it. I want to be known for someone who was the real authentic self, who loved deeply, lived passionately and gave their best. So I don't need to have my name chiseled in granite somewhere on a monument. If I'm known for those things, being a good human who gave more than they got, I'm happy.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time, Brandon. It was truly an honor to learn from you and be able to sit here with you today. And I truly enjoyed our time. So thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.